I want to welcome you all here today. I'm Alex. I'm part of the marketing team here at ShipHawk. I'll be your host for the next few minutes. I want to thank you for taking valuable time to join us. We prepared what I think is going to be a really good session with three experts in their fields. And what we're going to cover is the three components of best-in-class omnichannel operations and the technologies to get you there, the technologies to achieve best-in-class. As I mentioned, I'm joined by three colleagues from my company, ShipHawk, also from Acumatica, and from Kensium. I'll let them introduce themselves in just a moment, but first, I do want to cover just a few housekeeping items. The first thing is, if you have any questions as we go through this, we encourage interaction. Please do ask your questions. Drop them in the Q&A, which you're going to find down in the bottom panel on the Zoom here. So just please paste anything in there that comes up. I will be sure that we answer your question. It might not be live today, but I will make sure we will follow up with an answer. The next thing is we'll be recording the session. So if you have to duck out early or you want to share with a colleague, we'll be sure to share this with anyone that attends. If you have any questions or technical issues, please reach out to us. You can find us at marketing@shiphawk.com. If you want to learn more about Acumatica, Kensium, or ShipHawk, please visit our websites, and we are happy to help you. You can click on the Contact Us or Let's Talk links on our websites. So with that, I'm going to ask Omar, David, and Nibesh to please appear. If you could turn on your cameras and come off mute, and if you could just do a brief intro, and if you could talk about your role, the company you work for, and your expertise and focus areas. So Omar, I'm going to ask you first, if you could intro yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Hi, everybody. My name is Omar Ghazi, and I'm the Senior Product Manager of Integrations with Acumatica. I manage the roadmap for any cross-vertical integrations that Acumatica Integrations team develops and maintains. I also serve as a consultative role for some of our ISVs and helping with them with going to market with our solutions they have built to integrate to Acumatica. And I have been with the company for almost 2 years. Prior to that, I have worked in the ERP space, specifically selling ERP in the manufacturing industry. And before that, I used to work for a large enterprise manufacturer in the process manufacturing industry.
Awesome. Thanks, Omar. Nibesh, how about you?
Hi, my name is Nibesh Mokhtan. I work here at ShipHawk in product management. Currently, I'm responsible for most of our integrations with e-commerce systems, ERP systems, and transportation service providers. So I oversee the integrations side of the house here at ShipHawk. But prior to product management, I've also done solutions consulting with working with customers to get them live, connecting various systems and all that. Before ShipHawk, I have some background in consulting, working at some startups and in information systems.
Awesome.
Hi, everyone. I'm David Eichner, a licensed CPA for the last 24 years, and been working in ERP since the mid-90s. I have an engineering background, a business background, a accounting background, and a technology background. So I've done development in the Acumatica space. I've implemented in the Acumatica space. And now I work for Kensium on the sales team as a pre-sales engineer doing demos of Acumatica and any of the many products like ShipHawk that have native integrations with it.
Awesome. Thank you, David, and thank you to all three of you. So as you can see, three experts in their fields, and they're going to each cover kind of three different components. They're going to represent each component and how those interact together. So as we dive in deeper here, look for each of them to provide more depth in each of those areas. So with that, let's jump into the agenda. Our agenda is pretty packed. We're going to cover a lot of ground. A lot of this will be kind of starting points. Obviously, there's a lot more depth that we could go into, but our goal is to stay high level and make sure you get some actionable steps. So today we're going to first cover what do we mean by the three components. We're going to define what those three components are. Next, we're going to cover the current state of what many operations and the impact of those disjointed processes, the negative consequences a lot of companies face by having these disconnected processes and systems. Then we're going to transition to what's the other side of the coin. What does best in class actually look like, and what's made up of best in class? Finally, probably the most important part is we're going to give you actionable steps that you can begin today. And our goal is not to share some long-term vision that's years out, but rather specific things you can put in place today that start to build you towards that best in class future. We will end with a quick Q&A. If any questions come up throughout, I'll be sure to try to ask those as they come up, but I do want to make sure we save some time at the end for Q&A. So before we jump into the best in class components, I do want to just start with some basic definitions. I'm going to ask each of our three panelists to describe each component, their representative component. So David's going to cover the customer facing front end. Think of this as the channels where you receive orders, where your end customers actually place orders, whether that's a B2B customer, a B2C customer, a D2C customer, whatever they represent. All those channels need to be aligned. Nibesh is going to talk about what happens once that order takes place from warehouse and fulfillment perspective. And Omar is going to cover the back office system and what needs to take place in the ERP. So David, I'm going to ask you first, can you define a little bit more, what do we mean by the customer facing front end?
Sure. So from a customer facing front end, what we're talking about is the world in front of the buy button. So that could have a couple of different meanings. It could be your commerce site, whether you're running a commerce site that you've developed yourself on Magento or one of the other tools that we used to see websites developed on, or whether you're using sort of the Office 365 version of e-commerce now, which is BigCommerce and Shopify and some of these platforms that have allowed you to outsource the hosting of e-commerce sites and the development and the integration of e-commerce sites. Additionally, you may be looking at the experience of a customer who's come into your store, a brick and mortar store, and is at a point of sales cash register software application, or omnichannel aggregators like Seller Cloud, Channel Advisor, Feedonomics, Amazon connections, eBay. There's so many different channels today that your customers are going to want to approach you through. And what we're talking about is having a better experience for that customer, whatever front end they're coming to you through. Awesome.
I'm going to use the term the world in front of the buy button. Let's switch gears and talk about the world behind the buy button. Nibesh, can you talk about fulfillment and the warehouse, what needs to happen?
Yeah, definitely. So the world behind the buy button starts right at the buy button, and it's often interconnected, right? Starting with, your customers are ready to make that decision. You've already reached out. They've already reached out to you, and they're ready to make that buying decision. It starts with that expectation setting of, here's what you're going to get, here's how much it's going to cost, and here's when you're going to get it, like setting that initial expectation. And after that, it now goes through your operations. It goes through the cycle of your system of record. It could be an ERP system. And then it goes through, I'm not going to talk too much about the ERP system side, but on the fulfillment side, there's your warehouse operation. How are you receiving that inventory? How are you managing that? How efficient is your warehouse operation? Do you know which inventory, which warehouse it's supposed to go out of? And then there's the actual fulfillment side. How do you decide to fulfill your promise that you made to the customer? Are you going to get your packages or your products there in time? What kind of service or carrier are you going to use? What kind of documentation are you going to send them along with? And then there's to close the loop, you have to work with your source systems to, maybe there's billing and post-shipment notifications to the customer. tracking. Maybe there's other customer experience related. Maybe you want to provide them options for returns, and then there's other. And even after that, you want to make sure that they're able to track the orders and things like that. So that's the wide spectrum of the world behind the buy button.
Perfect. Thanks, Nimesh. And you purposely didn't talk about the ERP because we have somebody that can talk about the ERP. So Omar, maybe you can talk about, as the world behind the buy button and the world in front of the buy button are kind of taking place, what's happening from an ERP and a source system of record perspective.
Yeah. And I'll take a really quick step back and explain that I think it's very important as a business to understand what type of merchant you are. And most commonly, there are usually three primary types. You can have other types as well, but you're either a B2B, a business to business, a B2C, business to consumer, or more something that's becoming more and more popular is D2C, which is direct to consumer. And so knowing this is going to be crucial on what your brand is to your audience, what software you will need to be successful, and what your audience will expect of you. And a lot of today's buying journey, as David mentioned earlier, begins with something like a Google or Amazon. And regardless of the type of business, B2B, B2C, your buyer will almost always want to research the product or services on their own before they even pick up the phone to talk to a sales representative. And the buyers, because of that, will need to be able to know about your inventory, what's in stock, what is out of stock, what are the lead times to be back on stock. So you need somewhat of a management system for your warehouse, and also be able to manage inventory and as Nimesh mentioned, move the inventory efficiently. Like most merchants, you will probably also likely need a place to have different variations of product if you have different product configurations that you provide. And then as you learn about, the other aspect, as you learn about your buyers and you interact with them, you'll need to manage your buyers who are on the different stages of their journey, right? They're just researching to they're about to make their decision. And so you need to be able to also, as a result, handle any sort of potential customer or existing customer inquiries, be able to handle cases. And this is all in addition to, but also extraneous to the whole fulfillment process of an order. And then once the order is fulfilled, you'll need to be able to manage the financial aspect of things, whether it's receiving the payments from the customer or making vendor payments if you're working with vendors, because financials are a very crucial aspect of your business's profitability. And then finally, as a result of that, you'll need to be able to have a trusted vault, or I like to call it a backbone, that you can properly rely on to be able to store that information and then communicate to different areas that you need to. But you need to have that solid backbone in place, and that's where the ERP definition of an ERP would come in.
Perfect. Thanks, Omar, and thanks Nimesh and David too for kind of covering the definitions. I think it's important to level set on what do we exactly mean by each of those three components, and obviously how they all interact together. Shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about a current state for, I'll use the word typical, and there's not really any typical operation, but somebody that hasn't started down the path of an ERP or an e-commerce cart or WMS or fulfillment system, and there might be pieces of that, but what does a typical operation look like? And what are some of kind of the negative consequences and pain points that are experienced by a company that has a disjointed system and really hasn't kind of brought these things together? So David, I'm going to ask you first, if you could talk about that front end experience, the customer facing experience, and all those different channels, and what does a process look like before a true omni-channel system is put in place?
It's kind of funny. I'm actually at a trade show today. I've been here since Sunday, and so we're talking with a lot of companies that are experiencing that pain point associated with having sort of this disjointed band-aided together systems, right? So they have all these different systems. None of them are completely synchronized. So as a result, you have different sets of data sometimes that you have to reconcile, and all of the work that they have to spend trying to get good data that they can rely on for business decisions. At the heart of running a good company is having good data that you can make good decisions based on. So that requires good reports, consolidated data, right? When you get into an ERP system, when they come to talk to us and they start giving us their business requirements, we're talking and we're identifying, oh, okay, so let's say you have QuickBooks Online, and then you have another system over here doing your inventory management, and another system doing sales, and another system over here doing fulfillment. And they're having all of these pain points, and they become really severe as you start to grow. You can patch together and you can band-aid up to a certain level of revenue. But growing beyond a certain level of revenue, if you want your company to really grow effectively, you've got to have some really consolidated system that has a single source of truth. And you need to remove all these data silos that are having separate sets of truth that you're trying to band-aid together and synchronize together all the time. And so we see disjointed, combinations where you have shopping carts that maybe are not having the correct data synchronized, don't know the quantity available in the inventory, but they're selling in the dark, essentially blind. Or they think it's synchronized and it's not really, and that's even worse. Brick and mortar stores, they also are having to deal with some of these issues. But just having a single source of truth so that you can have good analytics, you can have good alerting to exceptions and things that you need to focus on and address by having a system that alerts you to those in a real-time fashion because it has a single set of truth. We look at these things with people, and like I said, they need this capability in order to grow beyond where they're at. Right? Or they need this ability if they want to sell the business. They need this ability if they want to turn a business over to their children to run in the future and have a good sense that they're going to be able to not have all that pain of dealing with those band-aided systems. So I'll end it with that.
Yeah. And Omar, I'm going to ask you next to build off of that, and Nimesh, you're up after that. So you have a minute to think about your response, but Omar, maybe you can build off what David was saying.
Yeah. And exactly, building off of exactly what David was saying, is that's one of the areas we see from an ERP side is you have very, very disparate systems, and often it includes a person managing multiple areas manually, or maybe even worse, you have different siloed departments and areas of the organization managing things differently and having manual handoffs, right? Or somebody calling up the phone to make sure the different warehouse has something in stock or not. A lot of that happens very often, and that's a result of not having that single source of truth or that backbone in place. So you have somebody that, you have some department or a person managing all your financial needs. And so you need to be able to know who owes you and who you owe. And then any sort of customer or prospect records, if you want to be able to manage prospects that are interested and you want to win them as a customer, being able to manage the relationship, your customer relationship. And you might have a system where your system is, believe it or not, I have seen some customer interviews or customer site visits where they're managing a lot of orders and high profile customers, et cetera, all in whiteboards in different meeting rooms. And you need to be able to have a place where all of that is stored, and no matter who you are and which areas of your business or organization, they can rely on that information so that it's not outdated as soon as you start writing it down, right? So that's very important to have that. And then we also mentioned a little bit on the inventory and stock allocation and your vendor management. And so I think that all of that kind of comes into say. But I also have a little bit of a statistic is that 90% of your shoppers are almost always looking for convenience than any other factor. So if you don't have a proper system built to have that proper communication, whether it's internally or externally to prospects and customers, then that kind of falls apart if you don't relay that effective communication to your shoppers. So they need to be able to research, be able to know whether they can pick up goods or return goods. How easy can you make it? How frictionless can you make it? Because that's going to win your customers, make them turn from prospects into customer. And so without each areas functioning efficiently but on themselves and then doing those proper handoffs, your backbone will fall apart. So that's why I think it's very crucial to have those pieces in place, and not just if you're looking for growth in your business, but also if you want to improve your current operations. There might be areas that you're not having great success at, whether it's quality or timing of fulfillment timing, and I'll let Nivesh speak about that more, but those are all areas that you could easily find areas that are pain points for your business.
Makes sense. And if that customer doesn't have their experience, man, they're going to go somewhere else. Unfortunately, that's the reality. Call it the Amazon effect, and the expectations that Amazon has set. So, Nivesh, maybe you can cover next. What's happening in the warehouse? So we've talked about the system, the receiving the orders and the back office system. What about in the actual warehouse itself and the physical products in the warehouse being shipped out to customers?
Yeah, I want to take a step back. David and Omar already talked about the challenges of disparate system and data silos. The most fundamental problem that we've seen, especially because in my experience has been working with customers who are right at that level of, okay, this is an operation which is scaling now and we need better systems. So the most important thing there is the technology evolution with shipping. Even though shipping is a 5,000-year-old industry, the technology there is very archaic. So before the 2000s, computer systems were just looked at as record keeping. There was not much like user experience or optimization or things like that. After 2000, it evolved really well, especially for the customer facing piece, right? So like Amazon's websites, .com bubble and all of that really made things very accessible to the customer, and it enhanced the customer's expectation really high. But technology didn't really catch up that fast in the back end, like how the warehouse is managed, how the fulfillment software, carriers, and all of those things. And the biggest issue right now is even with systems, even when you have systems, you're still making a lot of decisions manually on the floor. And the more decisions you make on the floor, the more error prone it is, the more slower it is. And especially with we've seen a lot of employee turnover, and warehouse employee management is really hard. So they leave with your institutional memory after like 3 months or 6 months, and then you have to retrain the staff again. So if I had to just focus on one element, it's the manual decision making on the floor. And what are those decisions? Those decisions are, what package should I use? Which carrier? Is this service better? Can we save money using FedEx Ground instead of FedEx 2-day? Or what documentation is required for this customer? Oh no, this customer needs another packing slip, not that one. So like all of those little decisions piled up, really affects your operation, and ultimately it ends up affecting your customer expectation, customer satisfaction, because of errors, because of delays and things like that. And then also your bottom line, your business, if it's not efficient enough, you're spending more resources and money running it. So obviously it affects your profitability. But again, I think the main issue is the customer side of technology has evolved so fast, and they're like having that Amazon expectation, but the backend systems are still catching up. So there's not that many solutions that are very integrated good at eliminating manual decisions.
Awesome. Well, I think that tees us up well to talk about what does best in class look like. And, we're talking about the three separate components, but they're really not separate. They are all truly integrated. So if you can talk about, each of you could talk about what does the best in class system look like for those three components, the front end, the back office, and the warehouse fulfillment. But also if you could describe how those interact. And I realize you guys are going to probably step on your toes a little bit. That's okay, because ultimately these systems, they do interact and they should interact. So Nimesh, I'm gonna actually ask you to just keep going. So now talking about, okay, manual processes and what happens now if you were to actually truly automate the warehouse and fulfillment process. So you can talk about behind the buy button. I'll go to you first.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of stepping on toes with systems, especially if there's like 6 or 7 different systems working together.
In a good way, right?
In a good way, yeah. And it's the challenge is to find that balance to really make those work for you instead of against you. So starting with the front end side of things, so what is a solution versus a best in class solution? So any solution today will be able to, they'll provide rates. They'll be able to provide rates or set expectations to the customer, but what kind of decision making?
Shipping rates.
Yeah, shipping rates at the checkout. But there may be different types of customers. Some may be happier with flat rates. Some may be happier with real-time rates. There may be situation where your business needs to mark up or mark down rates, depending on the audience. Before setting expectations with the customer, was your system able to check in real time with the carriers and your other systems and inventory to really make sure that that is available and that expectation setting is correct? So there's those processes of that system really talking to every other system to make sure the right decision is being made. And then there's also going deeper. Before providing rates, was there a packing optimization done? Was there a real-time talking to carriers and making real-time decisions? Was that done, or was it just, okay, based off of, one example is if you have correct dimensions and weights, you can figure out before providing rates to your customer, you can figure out it's going to cost my business this much, versus if you're just going off of like historical data or flat rates, you may be losing money, or you may be not providing enough competitive rates to your customer. So there's a lot of those aspects in the front end rating, or in your in-cart piece. And then in the back end, most systems are able to manage your inventory, count inventory, but how efficient is it? Is it able to continuously optimize your way picking? Is that system able to consolidate orders that are going to the same customers so that the picking process is more efficient and you're spending lesser time in the warehouse? What is the level of accuracy of your cycle counting and inventory? So that's for the WMS, warehouse management piece. And then on the shipping side, how well are you able to affect the final decisions on the floor based on your business rules? You have different segments of customer, different product segments. You may have different offerings, or there may be some seasonal activities that you're doing. And there's like a lot of these decisions. Not every shipping decision is linear, or it's simple, right? So it really depends on that particular shipment or the customer. So how well are you able to affect those decisions based on your business rules? That matters really a huge amount. And then there's things like, can you process hundreds of orders at once instead of one at a time? Can you generate all of the correct documentation? Like if you're working with B2B businesses, carton labels and SSCC IDs, if you're talking about customers, are you putting in the right information on the packing slips and things like that the customers are getting? So there's that piece. And then finally, there's the piece of how well is that system connected to the rest of your system, and especially your source system after you've made those fulfillments. Are you able to in real time update your other systems, warehouse management or ERP systems, to make sure the costs, the billing process, and all of the downstream process are executed in real time with high accuracy? So yeah, it's all the same things, but it's the depth of each of these areas that really defines best in class.
Perfect. Thanks, Nimesh. And Omar, I'm going to hand it off to you next. Nimesh kind of teed you up a little bit, saying also making sure things tie back to the ERP system of record.
Yeah. So modern ERP systems, you'll see more and more that are cloud-based, or something like Acumatica, which was born in the cloud, and it was created from scratch in the cloud. They are also able to leverage some of the existing technologies when it was created, instead of having to pull everything from years ago to the cloud. And so one of the benefits of that is that you're able to integrate directly with things like web stores, or if you have POS devices. So it helps you provide or deliver a very satisfying customer experience, no matter where your buyers are buying your products from. So being able to have that comprehensive item information and displaying it, like I mentioned, in real time. And so if inventory is low, or a certain amount has been sold on one channel, but then having it reflected on another channel, all passing through the ERP system, such as Acumatica, is a best-in-class experience for you as a business. But then able to have that visibility on the back end as somebody who is performing like the operations or management or inventory management, having that visibility across whether it's warehouses or bin locations, shelf space, and items that are in transit to be delivered to you, and have that available to promise type algorithms that are inside of Acumatica, helps buyers informed of like the goods that are expected. And then Nimesh mentioned how the packing process, Acumatica allows you to have the pick, pack, and ship process, whether it's batch or in wave, whatever type of picking that you do, it caters to those needs. And it really having that ERP that enables you to have, or enables you to perform and have it allows you to promote a high perfect order rate. So oftentimes perfect order rate essentially means, did you provide the right product in the right box, in the right condition, at the right location, with the right invoice at the right time, to the right customer, and the right correct invoice, right? So there's a lot of things that could go wrong in any of those touch points, and Acumatica enables you to ideally catch if there is a mistake on any of those steps early on. And we do that through our dashboards and any sort of exception recording, or being able to have alerts in the system to provide to employees, so that you can remove those obstacles as they come up before the final shipment is made. Or essentially that whole process, if you're able to address those, helps elevate some of those customer satisfaction level, and helps foster some of that brand loyalty at the end. So we also have a very flexible order management system. So if you need to add, change, modify, delete any of those, so you'll be able to find that in other areas too. But when in combination of everything that I mentioned is what helps it become that best in class. And then I don't want to forget this comes back to it, because after the order is fulfilled and everything, then your company's financial has to be addressed across, if you have multiple branches, warehouse, etc. you need to have a way to aggregate all of that financial data and manage all that, whether it's accounts payable, accounts receivable, inventory management, CRM, order management, all tied together to give you a very 360 view of your business. So it's very crucial to that you are provided with that through your ERP solution.
Awesome. Thanks, Omar. And I'm not a CPA, but we do have a CPA here. In fact, he's the next guy I was going to call on. But talking about the financial process, and David, from your perspective, anything that you would add that Nibesh and Omar haven't gone through yet around what does best in class look like, and especially focused on the customer facing front end?
I think the primary thing for the customer facing side of things, because they really covered a lot of more of the back end, and so I won't cover a lot of that, or I won't repeat a lot of that. But I think the primary thing that distinguishes best in class is a consistent customer experience, no matter what channel they're going through. So when I say that, I mean consistent pricing for whatever source they come through, consistent information about the quantity available, consistent information about the attributes of the products. So there are things that we have with Acumatica and all these connectors that we have for sales channels that we can automatically in real time keep track of quantities available at our warehouses as each sales channel is placing a hold or allocating against those products that we have available. We want all of those channels to be in real time aware of how many are left, right? And so that's a key part of our big commerce connector with Acumatica, our Shopify connector with Acumatica. Some of the things that are synced in real time are quantity available. When we add new items or we update pricing on items, those are updated in real time to all of the channels, whether it's Amazon, whether it's BigCommerce or Shopify, whether it's the brick and mortar point of sale system in our stores at different locations, whether it's just the person who is placing an order on the phone with a customer, that he can see available quantities in that same fashion right within the Acumatica or the ERP system. So I think those are some things that are really the most important. But I think some other things that are more back officey that I hadn't heard yet are things like reducing the amount of data entry, right? Pre-2000, everyone had to key in every record by typing, right? We had accountants who were essentially data entry. And what we're seeing is with technology in a really good ERP system, we can automate things like payables so that when your vendors email you an invoice, a PDF invoice, which more and more we're seeing, at least we are seeing with the clients that we're talking to, the majority of their invoices from their vendors are coming via email. And with Acumatica today, we have a module called AP document recognition that is becoming more and more popular. I love to demo it because I love to reduce data entry. I think accountants should be reviewing data and be analysts about the flows of data in their accounting systems and not data entry people. So imagine overnight, your ERP system is reading your emails from your vendors and your payables at yourcompany.com. It's recognizing those PDF invoices. It's creating the vendor bill records based off of those invoices. And it's stacking them up for you to review in the morning so that you can come in and say, yeah, it did it perfectly. Or, hey, I need to train it so it remembers next time that this vendor's has this field on this area of the invoice, and it will remember that because it's a combination of machine learning, artificial intelligence, and OCR technology from the past, but it's been revved up now with artificial intelligence and this machine learning capability, so you can teach your systems to recognize each vendor's unique invoice layout and have the ability to say, yeah, that looks good, send it through the approval process, right? Maybe you have a workflow for approving those payables documents, and it'd be useful for you on a mobile phone to be able to look at your approvals as a manager and to be able to drill down to the attached invoice that came in through that whole process. I just recently discovered it even handles three-way matching. So if you have purchase orders that you've received and the invoice is coming in from that vendor later, it actually will, if the PO number is on that invoice and the item number is in a line of the invoice, it will do the three-way matching quickly. It's just an amazing technology that Acumatica has come up with, this product that reduces all that data entry, right? Other ways that we can have reduction of entry is having things like quotes, create opportunities in quotes, creating sales orders without having to rekey data. So you have more automation within a best-in-class ERP system that is going to provide you good inventory numbers in real time to your customers and your salespeople so that you have a better customer experience.
Awesome. Thanks, David. And thanks to all three of you. So moving from a typical operation to best in class, there's a gap there. There's a big gap. And we owe it to the audience to give really actionable steps. So even if you had the desire and the need and the resources to start moving tomorrow, it's daunting. And where do you start? So I'm going to challenge each three of you to really give an actionable, concrete next step. Like where do you start if you wanted to start on this journey tomorrow? So Omar, I'm going to ask you first. What's the best place to start if you were to start tomorrow?
Yeah, I think one of the areas to look at is are your growth targets. As a company, as a business, where are you today and where you want to go? Because we like to call it a digital transformation. So in that journey of your digital transformation, where are you? Are you in the right? Are you in kind of the immature, I don't like that, it may be the infancy stage, or maybe you are an emerging business, or you're already established, and or you're an advanced operation. So like if starting in each of those kind of four stages, where are you in that journey? And we have all those resources to help you understand and maybe do an evaluation of your current operations and identify, okay, you might have some integrations, you may have slight ERP features, but not quite a full-fledged ERP. You have some flow between your different sales channels or different presence that you have where you in the different marketplaces where you sell your products or the e-commerce platforms, or you could be emerging where you have some of that integration, or as David kind of alluded to, some of that automation is in place. You have a proper CRM solution. Maybe you're maybe you need to be able to manage your special customer discounts, right? Like those kinds of things, to somewhere where you are more established and you have that more automation in place. You're leveraging modern technology. You have fewer and fewer disconnected systems, and then you're all the way to the advanced level where you could use our AP document recognition feature, which leverages the machine learning and AI to help provide you. It's not in your face AI, but it's in the background working, and it helps provide you the proper context. And then if you need to retrain it, you can obviously choose to do it to make it even better. So it's very important to identify where along that journey or the different stages of the digital transformation you are. And the first step is to look inward and identify where you currently are and where you want to go, and then identify the next steps from that point.
Awesome. Thanks, Omar. And I like that word a lot too. I think sometimes it's kind of thrown around loosely, but it is a transformation. I think it's important to call it that. It's an evolution, but it's also a transformation. So Nivesh, how about you? Can you talk about from a warehouse and fulfillment process, what's the best place to get started? What's concrete steps that can be taken?
Yeah, the first best step is to take a step back, right? Always. We always we're actually doing a research project right now with many of our customers to understand how do they measure performance and in their warehouse operations. And we're finding out that a lot of customers don't know the answer to that. They don't know what to measure. And I think, like Omar mentioned, looking at your growth targets, looking at where your company is going, I think it's really important first to understand your problems. Are you having a lot of orders, wrong items being shipped to customers? Is that your biggest issue? Are your customers leaving the cart more than the industry average? What is your problem? So really understanding your problem first. Did you have to hire way too many warehouse workers last year because of your growth and you weren't able to find enough, and there was a lot of turnover and you had issues training them, right? So really focusing on the problems that you have, looking inside and figuring out the problems before being overwhelmed with the features of different systems. I think that's really important because there's just a ton of technology and features now coming out, and it's like, oh, do I use that? And is that going to solve my problem? Instead of that, if you focus on your problem, and then if you don't measure something, the best day to start measuring is today. So you can start at least some sort of data. And the second step is finding the right people and the right partner, not just a solution, but a right partner who you can actually have a conversation with, and like Omar mentioned earlier, who you can, who can help you look at your operations and figure out where's the inefficiencies, and working with them to like slowly, use solutions like effectively. I think that's the way to go.
Makes sense. So don't jump to the solution yet, because you don't know the problem and you might fix the wrong thing that wasn't really broken, or the true burning fire. Perfect. And David, last but not least, from your perspective, what would you add that Nimesh and Omar didn't cover yet?
Well, I had at the top of my list some of the same things Nimesh had, actually. I was going to say, document what you expect in terms of the customer experience that you want to provide to your customers. Identify the issues that are causing problems or reducing your profitability because you're having to spend so much time addressing the problems and fighting the fires rather than preventing the fire from happening in the first place. Documenting what metrics are critical to your operation so that you have really a good view and an understanding as to whether your organization is operating effectively or not. And part of that's identifying the reporting and the analytics that you want to see. I would say an ERP that supports best-in-class applications. And I may be biased, but I think Acumatica's strength in competing with some of the other solutions that are available out there is they really do support best-in-class applications by making it so much easier to integrate with a REST-based API. It can integrate with anything within the Acumatica solution. It gives us the ability to integrate real-time syncs with other best-in-class applications, rather than just rolling out, as some of our competitors do, maybe lower-end products that they purchase for cheap and just made part of their stack. So, and then the last thing that I would say is that having a partner that really has a lot of experience in omni-channel retail commerce, which Kensium has won the Commerce Edition Partner of the Year award. I think as long as it's existed, we won it again this last summit. We have a huge amount of experience in the commerce arena. That's where our primary focus is. That's where most of our customers are. We have a digital agency side of the house that actually builds websites, whether and shopping carts, whether you have Acumatica on the back end or not. And we have another division besides our Acumatica division that does development of connectors for different best-in-class applications that we want to connect together with Acumatica. So I think having the right partner, having the right solution is going to get you where you want to be in terms of presenting that best-in-class experience to your customers.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Perfect. So there were a few questions coming in the background. I think some of them we actually already answered. There were a few more pretty specific questions. I don't want to cover them today. I think they're just a little bit too specific, but I am more than happy to follow up with these individuals and make sure we do answer those questions. If you have additional questions, please do reach out to us. As I mentioned, you can go onto the Acumatica, Kensium, or ShipHawk websites. Also, you can reach out to marketing@shiphawk.com, and we're happy to point you in the right direction. We will have a brief survey at the end of the session if you could give us your feedback. But with that, I do want to make sure you guys get back to your busy days, and I know there's a lot of fires that need to be put out, and also you have some first actionable steps that you can take towards this journey. So with that, I want to thank our panelists for the great discussion. As you can see, these are three separate things we talked about, but they are all completely interrelated, whether that's the Acumatica ERP, Kensium helping with the front end and the e-commerce engine, or behind the buy button in ShipHawk. So we're happy to help with any of those issues. So with that, I want to thank you, David. I want to thank you, Omar. Thank you, Nibesh, for joining us. Really appreciate the time, and we'll be in touch soon. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.